Welcome again to the Sophie Scholl Society. I'm Pastor Mel McGinnis of the Kind Tone Congregational Church, and with me again is a special guest, Shirley Lehman. The Sophie Scholl Society is about talking of the two forbidden subjects, the forbidden subject of religion and the forbidden subject of politics. Here, we're not afraid to talk about it. We delve right into it because the two mix. They go together. Yes, they are distinct, but you can't help talk about one without the other. And what you believe about faith and religion will affect what you do about politics. And what you feel about politics is an indication of your faith. With that said, Sophie Scholl was one who engaged the political community when it was very risky. And she saw things happening in her country of Germany that made her very upset. She used what was called the White Rose Society to distribute throughout Germany with her brother pamphlets that needed to get into the hands of the German people. In one of those pamphlets, she wrote this: "Why do the German people behave so apathetically in the face of all these abominable crimes so unworthy of the human race? Hardly anyone thinks about that. It is accepted as fact and put out of mind. The German people slumber on in their dull, stupid sleep and encourage these fascist criminals. They give them the opportunity to carry on their depredations. And of course, they do so. Is this a sign that the Germans are brutalized in their simplest human feelings, that no chord within them cried out at the sight of such deeds, that they have sunk into a fatal consciencelessness from which they will never awake?" I watched an interview with a woman, and the woman described growing up with her sister. In growing up years, they said they were apolitical. They just never associated much with it. And as time went on, things began to change a little bit. Still, the sister would not engage. She considered herself apolitical. At one point, she said this: "Politics is so terrible that it turns people off." And then she also wrote that it would be wrong to turn away from politics. This woman, who was once apolitical, began to get political. In a conversation with her sister, she said, "I hope to God there won't be war." But the sister replied, "No, hopefully someone will intervene and stop Hitler." Who am I talking about when I speak of one that was apolitical? To talk about one who, before the war, really didn't get engaged politically. The person I'm talking about is the same one that distributed the pamphlets throughout Germany, telling the people to wake up, to snap out of their apathy. Do you know who that was? That was Sophie Scholl. Once apolitical, no longer apolitical when she realized something had to be done. And that's the reason why I have Shirley with me today, because I think she has an interesting story to tell. In fact, as she was listening to what I just said, I have a feeling that she said to herself, I can relate to that.
Yes, I can. I guess my story of, I felt like it was beyond apolitical. I was just stupid, ignorant for many, many years. I was apathetic, one of the terrible apathetic majority, if you will, in my adult life. And I think what's interesting, when Mel told me to think about this, my political activism, when did that arise? And I thought, when did it? I had to really think about this. And it goes back to when I was having my first child, I began to think seriously, I don't really understand God. I don't understand this God thing. I was raised, I thought I was a Christian. And I thought, I don't get it. And before I have children and raise children, I have to know what I believe. And I have to know it well so I can teach them. And I don't want them to be confused like I've been for so long. And I was raised in a church, but not devoutly. And I just didn't understand what I was even hearing in Sunday in church. So at age 30, I started thinking, I've got to understand this. And I actually think I thought about it so much that I was praying to God. I was seeking, like the Bible says, seek and ye shall find. I kept thinking, I've got to find God. I've got to understand what I think I was taught, but I don't get it. Well, finally, so I had my first child, my first son, and fast forward, I moved to another state, and somehow, it was God that led me to a community church in Florida where people came from all denominations, Christian, but denominations, and I began to learn gradually over the course of a year or two, and my eyes slowly started opening up, and I was starting to understand, and I liken it to putting pieces of the puzzle together. The puzzle started coming together, and I found God. I understood Jesus as my Savior for the first time at age 33. For the first time. And the joy was completely overwhelming. I explained my born again experience to people. Some people are very polite, used to listen, but anymore I just let that go. It's part of my life. It's significant. Well, then fast forward, I had another child, and I thought, I need to know what I believe for my children's sake. That motivated me more than anything. So years go by, our family ends up back in New York, and it occurred to me one day, well, I don't know much about politics either. I mean, I was as ignorant about politics as I was about religion or spiritual life. So my spiritual life was going quite well. I was a solid Christian by this time, committed Christian, and I was learning voraciously that I have to be grounded in my faith. But then I thought, but I'm apathetic about politics. And, like people started saying, oh, you don't want to talk about politics, you don't want to talk about religion. Well, they became my favorite subjects. And I thought, I love these subjects. This is what else, what's more important to talk about? And so then, fast forward, it was about 2004, the election coming. And that was, I think it was George W. Bush running against John Kerry, it ultimately was. Well, at that election, I thought, finally I said, I have got to understand. I didn't understand the difference between Democrat and Republican. All I knew was that my parents were Democrats, from the 40s, 50s, 60s, the old Democrat Party, that's what I call it. I believe now the Democrat Party's totally been hijacked by the far left progressives. So in my mind, my feeling, the Democrats have been dissolved for a long time, in name only. But anyway, so I thought, I've got to know what I believe in politics. So I started talking to people that I admired, and I had an aunt and uncle who were staunch conservatives from Buffalo, and I listened to what they said. And then I had another aunt who was on the extreme other side, and I would listen to her. And I tried to compare it, and they both had points of view that I thought, yeah, I can understand this. Well, then I started reading more, educating myself, listening to news on different channels at the time, just different news channels, and trying to put it together, put the pieces together. Finally, I guess I finally came to the conclusion that I am a conservative. I'm totally believe in American way of life, our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, everything American. I am for that 100%. And I thought, well, this is republicanism, this is conservatism, so that's what I am. So I am not my parents' Democrat. I'm not of that party. So and then it fast forward to 2008, and it was Obama.
John McCain.
And John McCain, yes. And I was still, this is new to me, still politics. I just want to so I vote for the right person. I want to vote for the right reasons. And I just don't want to be apathetic anymore. I want to know what's going on and be aware and not have my head in the sand. And so I think I came to the conclusion, I'm sure I voted for John McCain at that time. But then there started to be more talk in the country about, there was this faction about government's gotten so big and it's so over encompassing. And the taxes are outrageous. And then the Tea Party movement arose, and it came locally. And I remember it was in the paper, there was going to be a meeting, and anybody that believed in limited government, the premises of the Constitution, and that we're being overtaxed, and just government was just overdone, and Big Brother is just getting bigger by the day. Come to this meeting. So I remember I did, and I thought, yeah, everything I heard was, I agree with this. And then there was more meetings, and sooner or later, I'm a Tea Party activist, and I've been involved with the Tea Party now for 10 years. This is our 10th year anniversary, and I've always been so glad that I've been part of this.
And we're so glad to have Shirley as well. And it's interesting, her spiritual awakening, a born again happening in her life,
Right.
predicated a kind of political
Right.
awakening.
They do go hand in hand. To me, they do. I don't know how you can be, how can you be a Christian and not be aware of your government, what's going on around you? How can you not be aware of politics? And how is it boring? To me, it's the most exciting thing, to be aware, and don't let what other nations have gone, how other nations have gone under, like Germany, like the Roman Empire. They were strong and fierce, but they were undone because they let God just disappear. And so we can't let that happen. I mean, this is a nation founded under God, and in God we trust. And how has that been slowly disappearing? How did we allow school prayer to leave the schools? And all these things that have been happening in our country down the road. And I sat idly by for years and kind of like, well, that's politics, that's the government. And then I realized, holy smokes, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You have to get involved. You have to state the truth as you see it. I mean, I'm sure people on the left feel the same. They see it as their truth, but really, I don't know. It's just something that you have to investigate. And I feel like God brought the truth to me. I wanted the truth, and I feel like every day is a constant education. Every day you can't let it go. You have to stay in tune, and you have to do your part, your small part, on keeping this nation free. I mean, this is the freest nation in the history of the world, this planet, and I believe it was God designed, and I have such awe of our founders. I mean, that God put these courageous, brilliant, intelligent beings together at one time in one place in this country to part from Mother England for freedom, for more freedom and liberty. And what they put together in our Constitution is nothing short of miraculous.
And I get the feeling that Shirley believes something very politically incorrect, that America is exceptional.
Oh, absolutely. Of course it's exceptional. And it has to continue to be exceptional. And how sad that so many people can't see this. I mean, people just, how can you not see it?
When you think that the founders said God exists, that he created us with individual rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Well, with that, we're going to stop right here and pick it up a little bit later. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sophie Scholl Society.